empathy de-escalates someone who is distressed?
I use this often because I work in a psychiatric hospital, and sometimes it's hard. The other day I had a patient really project his anger at me. I said something, he misheard it and blamed me for being rude, and he was angry at me, and he was projecting all this anger at me. And I was able to give him some empathy, even though I was feeling a little bit scared. I was a little bit triggered by that, worried that people will collude with him to think that it's true that I had been rude. But I just gave him a little bit of empathy, and just noticed how his anger, and he was yelling at first, de-escalated to the point where he could be quiet and listen.
Do you have a sense of fear in that? When you see someone in that high state of agitation and anger, do you feel fear in terms of relating to that person? Because I've had situations where I'm dealing with people who were very in conflict, and it's raw emotion, and it's like I'm stepping into that with, trying to step into it with empathy, but still I was like surprised at the amount of deep fear that I had inside myself, just trying to come forward with empathy.
Yeah, yeah. I feel it more when the anger is directed at me. I feel the fear, but I think, and this has progressed over time too. Especially like when men have been angry in the past, I felt more fear, and so that has gotten less the more I've done this work. I'm not as scared as I used to be when a man is angry. But now when his anger is directed at me, I still tend to get a little bit scared. But, it's getting a little better, and at some point I'm really hoping to be able to not take anything personally, to just be, really centered in myself and compassionate toward them. That'd be a state I'd love to achieve.
Well, part of that seems to be like practicing empathy. I found that the more I'm practicing empathy, receiving empathy, empathizing with others, that there's a resilience that builds up, that I'm able to be more present in those difficult situations.
Yeah, building your empathy muscle. Yeah.
Yeah, I was at Occupy, and there was a fight started between two people there, and they had like knives and pipes, and they were going at each other, and I was like, oh, I need to do something here. I'm Mr. Empathy, and I stepped into it, and I had a box of empathy cookies I'd been passing out, to the different people in the camp, and I said to the person who was wielding the knife, I said, oh, excuse me. Excuse me, and he turned around and he had the knife, he was like glaring, and I offered him an empathy cookie, and the way he glared at me, I could just see that it wasn't working, so that was like super high stress, and trying to de-escalate that, and I just realized, hey, I don't really have the skills here or the capacity for de-escalating this person. And I was like shaky for the rest of the day, having kind of been in that. He went, I slowed him down for a few seconds, and then he went back trying to kill the other guy and actually did cut him. So I'm just wondering, yeah, he actually slashed him in the arm, the other person, and it was one of the reasons they gave for shutting down the Occupy in Berkeley, that was the stabbing.
Yeah, an empathy cookie. Well, sometimes the empathy, the cookie could kind of seem like a distraction, and the empathy, direct empathy to that would be to understand what are the feelings in the moment instead of distracting from the feelings and just being with those. I'm hearing you're outraged, you're angry, you're enraged, and trying to figure out what the need is. Because when someone is angry, they're disconnected from their needs. There's a shadow between their anger and their needs. So they're operating kind of out of the primitive mind.
So so in that situation, maybe if I would have said, oh, you're feeling very angry, you're feeling very upset, and just reflected where they were,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
some way. Just saying, oh, I'm seeing that you're really angry, really upset, and what then? It's like just be with that,
Just be with whatever comes out, and they'll
uh-huh,
probably turn the anger towards you at that
uh-huh.
point, which can be quite scary. And be with them as much as you can. And at some point, you may want to express your fear. I'm feeling pretty scared right now. I need reassurance, and I'm going to be safe. Can you give me some reassurance? Can you tell me I'm going to be safe with you right now?
Yeah,
You
so
know,
that's the basic, and there's a whole scale of distress, and that empathy can be perhaps throughout that whole scale of personal distress as a way of reconnecting people, then, or de-escalating that stress.
yeah.
That's the benefit.
I
Hmm.
think anger is a difficult one to do because people are so disconnected from their needs when they're angry, and they're up in their head, and they're judging, and they're analyzing what you're doing wrong, and they're blaming you, like that patient was blaming me, and he was sure it was my fault, and he wasn't going to take any responsibility on his own. So that's what made it scary for me. But you can also de-escalate a patient who is in a lot of grief, and crying, and that's much easier for me to deal with. And that usually they usually calm down pretty quickly with empathy to the grief and the sadness.
So empathy is like a way of de-escalating from a lot of different emotions, than anger, grief,
Yeah.
and others. That.
Fear.
Hmm.
People are feeling scared. It's nice to acknowledge that fear. And that sometimes just by putting a little attention onto it, the fear will start to go away.